When you're heading home on public transport, chances are you've dealt with some strange, otherworldly things. Even if you don't think of it that way, there are things out there in the world that are more terrifying and have more supernatural feeling than we're willing to admit. Today we'll be looking at some of the most disturbing things caught on camera at train stations. From dilapidated stations to abandoned ghost trains in the woods, there's a little bit of everything here, and it's enough to leave you feeling a little bit off kilter. You'll have to watch through to the end to see what I mean by that. Terrifying guest on a late-night train says hello. Being alone on a train shouldn't be nightmare fuel, don't you think? Imagine being on your way home in the middle of the night when someone dressed like a sleep paralysis demon walks in and waves at you. It's enough to terrify anyone. Don't you think this would make you go and find somewhere else to sit? This clip might be short, but the range of emotion that goes across these people as they see the creepy masked individual to the point that they're waved at, well, if they didn't immediately move to get away, this is certainly not the best place to stop and make friends. Rome's terrifying underground. In ancient cities, there are plenty of dark, creepy things. YouTube channel Bino went down to an underground railway in Rome. It was late, or maybe just an unpopular area, but there wasn't another person anywhere in sight. The train goes off and one person stays behind to film. Everything creaks and groans, sounding dangerous and anxious, and eventually the train comes back. The person filming climbs on this time, sitting on the rackety dark train in the middle of the night. It picks up speed and you get a better look at the actual train, with yellowed lights, dirtied fixtures, and more. At the next stop, the trains power back up from a stop, going down creepy, cavernous tunnels. The station is up and running, but it feels like something in an old horror film. Late night train malfunction. Have you ever felt creeping dead? Like something bad going to happen? This TikToker turned on his phone when the train stopped suddenly. He looks uncomfortable, but his filming catches the moment when the camera goes out. No one knew why the train stopped or what was happening, but they were suddenly escorted out without explanation.
Yeah, so as soon as I can get out of the way, about another 5 minutes.
Whether this was just a series of terrifying late-night inconveniences or something more was happening, we can't be sure. But I'm pretty sure abandoned car in the middle of nowhere is high on the horror movie no-go list. Terrifying, never-ending subway tunnel. Every subway station is going to be different, but the one on 191st Street in New York is the deepest, which automatically makes it a bit more terrifying. The hallway seems to be never-ending, covered floor to ceiling in art and graffiti that gives it a terrifying, unreal quality. YouTuber Action Kid continues his descent deeper and deeper down, like something out of a video game. The noise of people around them is ghostly, echoing a few different electrical noises, voices, and shuffling through the hall. As if you don't already feel like you're walking through a twilight zone, eventually the doors open up and it lets out into its own, very normal-looking subway station. It seems like the station is unlike dozens of others, as if they hadn't just walked through one of the most surreal locations ever caught on camera. Burning train from hell. I think if this train pulled up to your station, you'd probably wait for it to go through. The video is aptly named Train to Hell because it looks like it's brought the underworld. In what seems to be an active, running train station, this broken-off train sits burning and abandoned but still driving on. How do you think you'd react to a sight like this? Would you be quick enough to film the moment to show other people, or would you let it be a terrifying, unverifiable story? Eventually, the train speeds off, taking the flames with it. Disturbing stranger shouts on train. Confined places with strangers are definitely not the place to pick fights. This woman was caught on camera harassing other people on the train, getting in her personal space and trying to pick a fight.
Go ahead. Back up, yeah? What you do?
Luckily, a man reaches in and separates the two of them, but the first woman continues to stand there and stare at her would-be victim. Even well after they've been pulled apart, would you be able to relax having witnessed or experienced this on the train? Train severely off route to abandoned stop. This train was in one of the worst case scenarios it could be in. Not only does this woman catch the lights flickering, which is why she began recording in the first place, but the train pulls into an abandoned station.
This train never stopped at no stop, right? And then I look, and it's at the 3 train.
As it pulls through, the camera shows immense graffiti, disrepair, and a few people. She doesn't know where she is or how she got there, effectively meaning she could be anywhere in that situation. This must be sort of a nightmare for people who frequently travel by public transport. She doesn't seem to have fallen asleep or messed up her direction. She's just suddenly nowhere she's been before, despite this seemingly being her usual route.
I'm stuck on the train.
Creepy, never-ending subway station. Nothing is quite so unsettling as an abandoned urban space. This man in a subway sees a few closed-down establishments, sitting like time capsules from when they were actually closed, before turning his camera.
Like, you have this Taco Bell, right? This hasn't seen human life in a decade. Like, what is this doing here? What is that? Why is that hanging there?
The vast empty station seems to stretch on forever, with no real end in sight. This leaves him seemingly aimless, walking through what looks like a black lot tour of a hospital.
Similar situation, the sucking light blinks.
There's an abandoned open sign, help wanted, old advertisements and all.
Got a sign that says open. Shit's not open. This shit has never been open. This help wanted sign, that was put there by a soul, a spirit that is trapped inside.
The TikTok says he doesn't feel like it's real. Instead, it feels like purgatory or some sort of liminal space.
This place isn't real, it is purgatory.
Nothing terribly supernatural happens in this clip, but it feels haunted from beginning to end. Terrifying to imagine it's really out there. Train up against a hurricane. We're all sort of one good disaster away from tipping over. Rarely do we ever see trains battling with natural forces. This clip catches the moment that the train fails to fend off a hurricane. First, the car the camera is on becomes disconnected from the tracks. Then quickly it continues to skid along slower and slower. The back half of the train quickly catches up to it, crashing into one much larger crash with the rest of the locomotive. I'm sure this terrifying vantage point is not one you'll forget anytime soon. Dark depths of the abandoned train tunnel. Something between the terrifying running pace this video is taking or the air sirens playing in the background, this is a great shot of something no one ever should do. This train tunnel is said to be haunted, but it's most likely just abandoned and dark. Eventually, the tunnel has no more ambient light, so the shot cuts to someone running through the dark with a light trained on them. There's no hint as to what this tunnel holds or what could be lurking in the darkness. For those who don't like the abyss, this one is definitely not for you. Empty haunted train station. Sometimes a place doesn't actually have to be abandoned to give off creepy vibes. It's almost funny how easy it is to set off those alarm bells in your head. This particular train platform simply doesn't end. There are no people around to make it seem natural and no windows to give you daylight or some indicator of the world. On both ends, the line continues on to an oblivion. This one and the abandoned station before definitely give creepy purgatory sort of vibes. Haunted train station ghost caught. What's worse than a creepy train station? One where you catch ghosts. No one wants to deal with otherworldly specters when they're waiting to go home, but these men catch what they believe to be a female ghost in the distance on camera. The figure is barely illuminated, but you can see the faint outline of something in the distance, that's for sure. What do you think? Are their eyes playing tricks on them? It's a quick clip, like many supernatural clips out there, but there's definitely something that changes in the future. Maybe not a ghost, but definitely someone watching. Haunted train car. Out in the woods, there's nothing scarier than urban exploring somewhere you can't fully see. Exploration Unknown is a YouTube channel dedicated to this sort of travel.
And tonight, I'm standing in front of this old iron train that's been left here in the middle of the mountains.
That being said, this duo seems interested enough to climb around this abandoned train in the middle of the woods, despite the fact that it might be infested with creatures. When he finally climbs into the train, it shows how much time and decay affected the old locomotive, as it was stripped from the inside by other explorers who had traveled there.
Almost all the switches and levers have been ripped off. People just ripped what they could out of here. And it's become vandalized so bad.
At some point in the video, they feel like they're being watched or are generally not alone there.
Dang it. I keep hearing something moving in that next car. Hello? Is anybody here?
They hear things constantly within the train, like disembodied voices, and eventually decide to leave. Urban exploring abandoned train station. It can give off some intense, creepy vibes even if there's technically nothing wrong with an area. This woman walks into an abandoned old train station, half stumbling around in the dark, before stumbling on what seems to be a nest of junk and trash piled up. The video cuts pretty quickly after that, but the woman seems to take a step back after seeing it. When you go into abandoned spaces, you never know. They might be less empty than you thought. Haunted and abandoned train. Sometimes when things are abandoned, they're forgotten in time. This whole train sitting in the woods was left behind over 50 years ago. Once used for a labor operation, it clearly never finished. The decommissioned train sits in the woods, rusting and getting old and looking like a metal skeleton out there. They don't take much of a video, just essentially pointing to the abandoned machinery, but something left out in the woods feels like it was almost done on purpose. What do you think? Before the last clip, since you watched until this point, why don't you consider subscribing to the channel? We upload 2 new scary videos every week, so make sure to stay up to date with our new releases. Rotting underground subway station. Even in the case of New York, where people regularly use the underground, there are going to be plenty of stops along the way. Not all of them will be familiar or regularly used. Some might grow ignored underground over time. This person stops off at the Chambers Street stop, and as they walk down the way, it's obvious that less and less care is put into this upkeep. More paint is flicked off, and more rot shows up on the wall. Eventually, the stairs lead to a slightly more vibrant part of the station, before we then see the worst yet. The buildings are so filthy and creepy looking. They remind you of a horror film. If only it was set in the terrifying underground stations people usually avoid.